Hey everyone, this is Kenny Coins with Marathon Money Podcast. Make every second count. I'm with Professor Brunello Rosa. He owns a company that he's been running for the past 7 years. He's a CEO in research and development. He's also been a professor for the school in London for the past 16 years, going on 17, economy and political science. Um, also he also does honorary visit professor at the City of University of London as well. He does seems like he does multiple things, and he has a book coming out called Smart Money: How Digital Currency Will Win the New Cold War and Why the West Needs to Act Now. So many things going on, so many things you're doing. So please tell me how you got into this world of economy.
Yes, yeah. Well, I've always been interested in economics, and actually economics and politics. Since I started my studies now, I would say 25, 30 years ago. And then I first graduated the University of Siena in Italy, and then moved to London at the London School of Economics, where I've been since in various capacities. I'm now the course leader of the course in global economic macroeconomic challenges. Is an executive course, but then I have other positions, as you said, at City University, at Bocconi University in Milan, and so on. And this academic activity has always been compounded by my role as a practitioner, because I've always liked combining theory with practice, so to understand how things really work. And so a few years ago, I launched my consultancy with Nuria Rubini, a prominent economist with whom I've been working for the last 12 years, and in various capacities. Before that, I was at the Bank of England, the central bank of the United Kingdom. So I had a variety of, as you can imagine, a position. And what I really like is being at the intersection between private sector activities, policy making, and academia. That's, I think, the perfect spot for me to develop my interests.
With all that being said, is what is your company doing now? That are you guys advising leaders? Are you guys informing what the public? What
Yeah,
exactly does your company do on a day-to-day
so
basis?
my company advises first and foremost private sector market participants, the macro hedge fund being our own typical client. But not just that, we also engage in discussions, in policy discussions with policymakers, with other academics and academic institutions more in general. So it's is a consultancy that effectively is able to connect the dots between various aspects of, uh, let's say, various fields: economics, financial markets, policy, geopolitics, political risk, and cyber risk. These are the things that we do, and we try to connect the dots of various among the various disciplines, and try, as we say in our motto, try to make sense of the world as it is. So it's a complex endeavor, as you can imagine, because there are many moving variables to take care of, but it's also extremely exciting with everything that is going on at the moment.
What made you get into this space?
Well, it's the passion for economics first and foremost. So how, especially macroeconomics. So I have a deep interest in what make countries succeed, what make countries fail, what economies can do to improve the quality of life of people, to improve the performance, the economic performance of countries. This is what really has always motivated me. But of course, in this complicated world, you cannot just look at economic variables. You also have to look at uh, financial variables. So the first thing I had a look at was the interaction between macroeconomics and finance. And then as the year passed by, we understood that policy is absolutely crucial. And so we started to introduce policy analysis in our reports. And then eventually geopolitics, which is different from policy or political risk, because politics is about the political discussion, the day-to-day political discussion. Geopolitics is much slower moving, and is about how countries stays in the world, given their geographical position, given their resources that they have, and so on. And finally, the last addition has been cyber risk, because most of the geopolitical events occur in the cyberspace before becoming visible to everybody in the battleground effectively. Today, most wars are hybrid wars, both in the cyberspace and in the normal terrains that could be sea, land, air, and so on. But all of them have a hybrid and technological components. So we need to be well aware of what's going on in that space as well to provide sound analysis for our clients.
Now, you said the journey you've been on is the study of how countries fail or how countries thrive. I want to ask a question. Can you simplify on on a high level how countries fail and thrive? I know that's like a big question, but can you make it simple? Like I would
Sure,
really want to know like how countries fail and thrive on a economy or geopolitical level.
absolutely. So let's start distinguishing the economics and from the geopolitics. They tend to go hand in hand. When you have a dominant power in the world, from an economic perspective, it also tends to have a strong geopolitical presence because, in order to maintain economic power, it also needs to exert some geopolitical power as well. If anything, just to dominate the trade routes in order to make sure that nothing goes wrong that can disrupt from a security perspective, its dominance, right? So these two things tend to be related. But if we focus on the economy only, just for a moment, I would say what really makes countries thrive is when, uh, if you want to simplify, when there's strong productivity, okay, which means all the um, factors of production have been used efficiently and effectively. So when labor is available and well trained, when capital is available and well deployed, and when and what economists call total factor productivity. So effectively, when the state is well organized and is efficient, and all these other factors are well organized, efficient, and effective. So when productivity is high, then countries succeed. And productivity comes from innovation, comes from sound organization, comes from constantly being on the technological frontier. That's
I
how
was
countries.
gonna bring up innovation, and it seems like while I was listening to you, that innovation is going to be the way you can get to productivity. The more innovative the country is, the better the country is, and the more successful the country being. So, in that one hand, you have to have innovation to deploy great productivity, which will also deploy great capital. Um, so, how does a country fail then? So, it'll just be the opposite of that.
Uh, is an element. So when countries stop being productive, when they are not well organized, when there's a high level of brain drain, so the best people leave, when there's a high level of corruption in the country, then the country starts accumulating debt. It starts living above its means. And so you know that when you start having debt, that's the first step eventually to fail, because when you're unable to repay your debt, that's the definition of failure. So you can have lots of debt. Think about the US today. They have a gigantic public and private debt, but they also are one of the most dynamic economies out there. They continue to grow pretty fast. Their labor force tend to be relatively well trained. The rate of innovation is absolutely great in the US and continues to do so. The Silicon Valley is there, but it's not just the Silicon Valley. The space industry is very well active, and others. So, you know, as long as you accumulate that in order to boost productivity, then you can repay this debt down the line. Eventually, when you start losing some of these factors, whether it's people, whether it's capital, whether it is a sound organization, whether it is ability to innovate, then you start accumulating that you cannot repay. And so it's just at that point is like it might be a slow motion train wreck, but it remains a train wreck. So eventually something goes wrong, that becomes unsustainable, and then countries fail. And that's history of the world. It's always happened like this. I mean, for the last 3,000 years, there's nothing new under the sun. It just happens in different circumstances.
So, what in your journey has made you so aware of this mind that you have to understand different countries and their economy and their geopolitical, and understand how people make money and thrive and productivity and innovation? What was the thing that sparked this journey?
Um, I would say is an accumulation process, because you start from, as I said, some broad interest, for example, in economics, okay? And then the more you know, the more you want to know, because you never have all the answers. It's like science. Once you reach a result, you just want to go beyond and find something else, and you build on previous results to get something new. And so this is the same for social sciences. Once you have understood how the economy works, then you want to start incorporating in your analysis how the political system works, because that's a very strong correlation between these two things. For example, there's a well documented relationship between political cycles and economic cycles. As political leaders tend to do the difficult things at the beginning of their mandate, because it's far from the election period. And this is the moment in which they can impose some sacrifice in order to then, so they use some political capital to impose some sacrifice in order to reap the benefit at the end of their mandate when they need to be re-elected. This tends to be the case in democratic regimes. In autocratic regimes is a bit the opposite. The moment in which the leader is chosen is the moment in which it's weakest, because it still needs to build the base, the consensus, the support it needs to remain in power for a longer period. So the more it stays in power, the stronger it becomes. So it's at the beginning that they are the weakest. So it's the opposite of democracies. When you begin your mandate, you have massive popular support, and then towards the end of your mandate, you tend to have less. So all this is to say that it's little by little that you discover all these new things. And then when you abstract from the day-to-day political life, then you start to look at the geopolitical projection of a country. So how the country stays in the world, how its fate will unfold over the next decades, not just the next few months. And so again, there's a new dimension to learn and discover about geopolitics. And so you're studying it very hard, and it's a new dimension. And then, of course, think about new disciplines, for example, psychology or sociology. These are very, very important discipline to understand economics, because people make decisions or choices, including economic choices, depending on psychological factors and events, as well as social pressure. So sociology is another very important element that can be incorporated in economic analysis. So the reason why I studied economics is because you can take from all possible angles. You want to have lots of math, you want to write lots of formulas, well, there's plenty. It's not enough. You don't like formulas, you like more the philosophy behind these things. Again, there's plenty of literature that discuss economics from a much more qualitative rather than quantitative perspective. And it's not less insightful, it's just a different approach to the same matter. So that's what I really love about economics, that you can go in all the directions that you can possibly want.
So, you know, talking about different countries, their economy, and geopolitical, is there a country out there that maybe you have been watching or you heard of that is slowly growing in power and innovation and productivity that we need to take notice?
Yes, I would say that would be the case of India. So India has been a very important and super rich country in the past. But then its share of global GDP declined over the last um, few centuries, not years, centuries. Let's not forget, then when Columbus, right, left the shores of Europe, it did bump, so to speak, into America, but he thought he arrived in India because this is what he wanted to achieve. He wanted to go to India. And because why people want to go to certain countries? Because they are the best and richest, right? You don't want to start a dangerous journey to get just to the poorest country out there. And there was, of course, the presence of other empires, the Persians and so on, that would prevent the trade of spices and so on from India and the rest of Europe. So Columbus said, why going through the land? I'm sure the world is not flat, it's actually a globe, so we can circumnavigate. So I take the boat and I will arrive in India from the other side. And guess what? In this journey, he bumped into what Amerigo Vespucci later on called America. Uh, but after so many centuries, and including in those centuries the British colonialism in the country, which had its positive but also its negative implications, of course, for the development of the country. Now India is clearly on its way up. From a population perspective, it's increased a lot. Now it's becoming one, maybe the most populous country in the world, overtaking China, which in fact is in demographic decline. Um, in terms of capital accumulation, they've been doing very well in the last few years because they have one of the factors we mentioned before, the ability to innovate. Their tech industry is second to none in biomedical science, in aeronautical science, in a number of other dimensions in which they are really the first, or at least among the first in the world, together with US, China, and some European countries. So uh, if you think about the factors of success we mentioned before, population is growing and is getting more and more educated. Capital is growing and started to be deployed much more efficiently. And again, we mentioned the third factor, the total factor productivity, which, as we know, is about the organization of the state, the efficiency of the use of the various productive factors such as labor and capital. They are getting better and better also in that domain. So a country that's clearly looking on its way up, I think, is India. It needs to be watched over the next few years.
So I do, before we start to get off, I do want to mention your book, um,
Yes.
Smart Money. Um, Basically, I want to talk about that. And no, the book is called Smart Money: How Digital Currency Wins the New Cold War and Why the West Needs to Act Now.
Yes.
Um, I know it comes. When is the exact date it comes out?
24th of October.
24th of October. Definitely will be getting that book and reading it. Why did you write
Yes.
that?
So the point is a perfect example of how economy, finance, geopolitics, and cyber risk converge. These are the digital currencies. And by the way, we are not talking about cryptos here, right? We are talking about the digital currencies that will be issued by central banks, will be the digital equivalent of cash that will replace over time, not now, over time, the physical cash that we hold in our pockets. It will become effectively digital cash in our virtual wallets, which mostly will be either in cards, like a credit card, or in our phones. Most likely, it's going to be in our mobile phones. Now, the country that has made the most advancement on that is China. China has already issued its own digital currency. And this could be an instrument of social control internally, but also internationalization of their own currency, the renminbi. And once you start internationalizing your currency, then you start having a geopolitical influence. Think about the mighty power of the dollar, of the US dollar. If that's the case, you cannot simply allow China to be alone in this space. They have a massive head start. They started in 2014, so 10 years ago, while Western countries have just started, literally in the last couple of years, to study the issue, while China already has issued their own currency, the digital currency. So this is a race, and this is a race in which the second takes none. So that's the appeal that somehow we do, and that's why we say how the digital currency will win the new Cold War between US and China, and why the West needs to act now is an appeal to act fast, because this is not a domain in which you can be second. Once you're second, once the infrastructure is built, then there's very little gain to have. So it's a race, and Western countries are far behind. You cannot recover and recoup 10 years in 10 months. There are some steps that you need to take, especially in democratic societies, that take a long time. So you cannot catch up. 10 years in 10 months. That's why you need to act fast and continue going fast in order to at least be part of the race. And that's why we decided to write this book.
So China's ahead right now by 10 years. So US must have started recently.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure your
And the
book
US
covers.
is not even acting. Is not even
Yeah.
acting. Among the Western countries, the one more backward on this.
Wow.
The
Wow.
European, the Eurozone is going much faster. The
So
UK is
I
faster.
guess we gotta read your book. We gotta get up to date. We gotta get knowledge. There's some knowledge I don't have as well. Um, but
You can
I want to.
already pre-order on online.
All right,
So
great. On
on
Amazon.
on on Amazon, yes, and directly on the publisher's website. The publisher is Bloomsbury, which, by the way, is the publisher of Harry Potter. So
Oh wow, wow.
if we were able to replicate even a fraction of that
Shut up.
success, I would be the
That's
happiest man on earth.
that would be amazing. If you get a fraction of that success, I will. I already want to do another interview later in the future, but I definitely would want to do an interview face to face. But Professor Rosa, I want to say thank you for coming on. I learned a tremendous amount about economy, geopolitical, rise and falls of country. Nice to know India's on its way to the top. I always feel like India was on its way. Um, Definitely with new companies coming in, like Apple, Samsung, are moving into their country, and we're using them as a manufacturer. But learning that on a more meticulous and more potent level really intrigues me to look in more. Definitely read your book. Anything you want to say to before we get off?
Say again.
Anything you want to say before we get off?
Ah, no, I really want to thank you for the opportunity that you offer to discuss also the journey of an economist, because economists not always have a good reputation. Sometimes they are considered a bit fortune tellers. Sometimes they are considered the doomsday, those who always bring bad news. But in reality, it's a massively interesting intellectual journey that I really encourage all young students, the one that I have at university and elsewhere, to engage, because it's absolutely fascinating. You'll never stop learning. And the more you learn, the more they want to learn and continue progressing. So, it's a fascinating journey that I would really recommend to everybody.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate it.